blendedschools.net Homeroom episode. I'm here today with Michelle Switala, who is a Pine Richland math teacher. She's currently on sabbatical as she pursues her doctorate with Pitt. We recently, in 2012, had an opportunity to have a panel discussion about many issues in education and technology, including today's topic, which is professional development. So tell me, Michelle, do you think it's a teacher's obligation to seek out and utilize technology to improve instruction?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I think that the responsibility lies in three places. I think that it's a responsibility of students to somehow communicate to teachers new techniques in some way. You know, I rely on my students to do that. I also think it's my responsibility to seek out and learn something about technology, although I don't believe that I could ever keep up with my students. You know, but I do have a responsibility as a teacher to find out what technologies have been scientifically researched and validated, and if there is something that has been proven to better my pedagogy or increase the way, you know, I teach, it's my obligation to learn how to use it and use it. And then I also think it's the school district's responsibility to offer training to teachers for similar technologies. But I do believe that it needs to be scientifically researched and proven in some way to be a good technique, not just another whistle, gee whiz, this looks cool.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and that's, you know, an interesting challenge just because the pace of technology change is so fast.
For sure.
You know, that the research, you know, even if it's a year behind, there's often things that are there. It's
an ambitious goal to say it needs to be scientifically researched, but I think that we spend a lot of time sort of chasing our tail.
Right.
You know, and I don't think it's the best use of our professional development. Research shows that the best way to implement a new technology is to, one, figure out what teachers need to use for their particular curriculum. So something that tech ed might use might be different than what I use, which might be different than something the art teachers need. You know, so having one professional development day where this just sort of gets rolled out with a PowerPoint presentation isn't really going to be effective. They say that only has about a 20% effectiveness in implementation. So find out what teachers need, do a little bit of show and tell, let the teachers practice, let the teachers implement, but let them know that there's somebody there to answer questions. Because otherwise what tends to happen is teachers might use something, if it doesn't work well in the network or they can't log on or something doesn't go well, they don't want to do it again because it's, you know, it's not a good use of your instructional time and it's a little humiliating. You're playing this great thing, try it, and then it's like, you know, it didn't work. And then have support, have somebody there to answer your questions about it. That cycle has an 80 to 90% implementation rate. But I understand it's a burden on districts to think about individual teachers' need and differentiation. But as I said in one of my earlier podcasts, one of the recommendations for closing the achievement gap is to have higher standards for everybody. And I want to hold my district and everybody's district administrators, you know, accountable for offering us differentiated instruction as well as us offering the students differentiated instruction.
Right. Yeah, and I think, you know, that's super important. And, you know, you talk, one of the things that interests me when you're talking about adopting technology is models for the diffusion of innovation and starting with early adopters and innovators who are going to be able to provide that support you talk about. You know, there are teachers out there who are comfortable enough that, you know, that small, that 16% or so, who can go and can try it out on their own and can, you know, roll with the punches. And then they can support in a second wave and a third wave the people who are a little more reluctant.
And I think we saw that in the rollout of blended schools in our own district. Some of us really jumped on and populated our sites a great deal. And then we were able to help the people that may be a little bit more hesitant. And, you know, as you learn things, like different people will figure out different ways to do things. So you just need to search that out and just sort of ask the questions like, hey, does anybody know how to whatever? You know, and certainly somebody has already figured it out, or if not, they know somebody that you can ask. So I saw that kind of implementation in our district as well.
Yeah, great. So now that's obviously the ideal of a district that differentiates professional development for its teachers. Not every teacher has the joy of working in such a district. What would you say in the short term is good advice for a teacher who wants to help himself or herself develop technology skills?
Right. I found it hard to do while I was thinking of everything else during my teaching year. But this year that I'm on sabbatical, I was fortunate enough to do some research to get ready for this presentation in Town Hall, and also for a class that I was taking. We were given a project to help a charter school in Pittsburgh integrate more technology into their curriculum. And I found one of the best places for me to learn was to go on a newsletter that happened every day. So I joined two of them. One was NCTM, which is National Council of Teacher Mathematics. So I suggest that everybody join one in their content area, because there's somebody else there that will filter things for your content.
Right.
But then also join a general one, such as Web 2.0 or Tech and Ed is another one run by a teacher. And I just get a daily newsletter every day. And when I pull up the newsletter in my email, it gives little blurbs of all the topics, and then I just go in and read the ones that I find interesting or that I think would be most useful for my classroom. And so I just kind of build up a file of that. So I think my plan is when I go back to school to take one planning period a week and sort of look through that and spend that 40 minutes really in-depth reading about one or two pieces of technology a week. That's my plan.
That's great. Yeah, and I think that kind of is a theme in individual learning in the 21st century, finding good curators of information.
Agreed.
And, you know, there's Twitter as well, following people in your subject area or at your level who can share things that are worthwhile for you. Obviously, Blended Schools offers webinars and courses that could be used by an individual teacher who's getting professional development, even if that administrative guidance isn't there.
Right, and a lot of those resources are free as well. I mean, these websites are free. I know the training on Blended Schools is also free. You know, so sometimes your content area doesn't offer free ones, but it could be at such a reduced price that it's worth it.
Right, yeah. So, what other ideas do you have to offer, you know, before we cut off this podcast about professional development?
Sure. I mean, I did read a bunch of white papers. One was by a man named Hobbs, who suggested some ideas for school districts and teachers. And one of them was to attend a technology and education conference. And I thought, okay, that's really interesting, because right now our school funding has been cut so much in Pennsylvania that our professional development budget is so low that I don't know too many of our teachers that are being able to attend conferences right now. But I think it's really important. I think that even at the SAS Institute, you know, districts are allowed to send one person for free. I think it tends to be a higher-up administrator, but I don't know how much of that gets disseminated down necessarily to our teachers. So I wonder if there's some way that, you know, you talked earlier about early adopters and people that are really into technology on the forefront. I wonder if it would be better to send, you know, a teacher from each building or somebody from each grade level or you know, middle school and high school and elementary school to one of these conferences and then have them share out, because they can customize and differentiate. You know, there was a dissertation I read from a woman in Canada named Sweeney, and she studied a group of elementary teachers, and they had a technology day where the students taught the teachers how to use the technology. And I thought that was a really interesting concept. And the reason it worked so well is there was already an atmosphere of trust, and that the students knew why the teachers were asking the questions they were asking, because they knew the curriculum. They were in that classroom. And so the teachers really loved it, and they didn't feel bad that the students knew more than they did on the topic, and the students loved it, you know, because they thought, well, I can really share out. I'm going to try a mini model of that. I bought my 6th grade nephew an iPad, and I bought myself an iPad for Christmas. He doesn't know this yet. And so what we're going to do is he's going to teach me how to use it remotely. So I'll get to practice remote learning and maybe some screencasting, and he'll get an iPad, and we'll try different applications every week. So I just kind of want to see how that process goes. I think it's interesting. But I do think teachers need to continue their professional development with experts outside of the school district. I don't see there's any way around that.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you very much for your thoughts on professional development, and thank you for watching another BlendedSchools.net Homeroom.